Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'm just doing the first top 10 list I've ever done on this channel, and I'm going to be talking about Attitude Era figures that Mattel should make. Now, in the last year or so, we've seen quite a few figures come out, or at least be previewed, that we never thought would ever be made. To name a few off the top of my head, Don Morocco, China, Wendy Richter. Mattel have come out with a lot of stuff that I never really expected to see, and to be honest, the Attitude Era in general has gotten a lot of attention recently, as much of a hard time as I sometimes give Mattel for not releasing certain figures. So it got me thinking, what Attitude Era figures should they make? And this is the top 10 list of those. In this list I'm not including any divas because the list ended up so long I decided to do them as a separate list. It also doesn't include any tag teams for the exact same reason. I'm also not mentioning Chris Benoit for obvious reasons. And I'm also not mentioning Gangrel because WWE does not own the rights to his character. That being said, we'll get into the list now. But first of all, I have an honourable mention for Jim Ross, which we really could do with a Mattel figure of. But, I mean, good luck with that. So number 10 is Grandmaster Sexay. Now, the ship has sailed on them doing this guy unless they do Scotty 2 Hotty again. But really, they should have done the two of them in the same series when they originally did Scotty. WWE had a strained relationship with Jerry Lawler's son. It seems unlikely that we will ever see him in Mattel Elite form. It's either a shame or completely doesn't matter depending on your opinions on Grandmaster Sexay and indeed Brian Christopher. While we're talking about Brian Christopher, number 9 is Taka Michinoku. How can a guy have had like so much behind him in the 90s and then have just been completely overlooked, not only by Mattel in the Elite series so far, but also by classic superstars? I'm pretty sure Taka Michinoku has not had a figure since, I don't know, did he have a Bone Cruncher? It looks like Taka had a Slammer, but that's more or less it. And he will get mentioned again on the tag team list, obviously. But yeah, it would be cool if they released a Taka Michinoku with the original red strap light heavyweight title. That would be really cool. It would just be cool in general to see the light heavyweight title in Mattel form. I have a feeling they'd probably just slap the Cruiserweight title on them again like they did with Dean Malenko, although that was supposed to be a WCW Dean Malenko anyway, so I don't really know. Number 8 is Raven. Now, Jax did a really good Raven in the Legends of the Ring one, but the main issue about that figure is that it is Jax and has all of the downsides of a Ruthless Aggression style figure. Raven does have some TNA figures which are technically to scale with your Mattel Elites, but I'm pretty sure all of them have a weird trigger arm, which was supposed to be in one of the figures, and then was just never taken out for the other ones. So they all have it. It's really pointless. It's really useless to animate with. You can sort of force it to work, but generally it would be better if Mattel just did another figure of Raven. Again, Raven didn't have the greatest of relationships with WWE, hence why he was there for such a short amount of time, but it sure would be nice if Mattel were able to pay him some respect in that sense. I'm sure there's plenty of people at Mattel that would love to make a Raven figure. Number 7 is Savio Vega, one of the more forgettable members of the Attitude Era, but nonetheless, I think the only member of the Nation of Domination that doesn't have a figure made, which that alone to me feels like they may as well make one. They didn't make a Nation of Domination version of Godfather, or Mustafa rather, but he has had a few figures between Godfather and Papa Shango. You can use the Godfather with them really, to be honest, so you can kind of get away with it that way. But Savio Vega's just had absolutely no attention, and if you read up on Savio Vega, he's like a really cool dude. He sort of does deserve to have a figure made just because of his personality outside of the ring. Number 6 is Kurgan. Now again, this will probably pop up again on my tag teams video, but to be honest, I'll take any form of Kurgan that you're offering. I'll take an Oddities Kurgan, I'll take a standalone Kurgan, I'll take a figure of him from Deadpool 2. I'll take whatever you're offering, as long as I can get Kurgan in my Fed. Again, I think, did this guy even get a Bone Cruncher? Okay, yeah, Kurgan did actually get a Bone Cruncher of both his attire in the Oddities and his attire in that weird army gimmick he had. But he hasn't been touched since. Now, a lot of the people on this list are people who haven't had classic superstars, but I think that was the last of them. Possibly not, but I think that was it. And the only thing I can really say is, why weren't these lot made as classic superstars? Number 5 is the artist formerly known as Goldust. Now, I personally believe we haven't had a good Goldust Elite yet. You've got the classic one, series whatever, but I don't really like the head scan on it, and I think it looks a bit awkward when you take the wig off it. I think the more modern Goldusts are just a bit boring, and I feel like we haven't had a good Goldust. So I'd take any Goldust really, but the artist formerly known as Goldust, fair enough, he had a lot of different looks, but if you could choose one look that wasn't racist, watch his fight with Flash Funk. Too outlandish, the thong thing he was wearing in the 1998 Royal Rumble, or was that 97? And just generally acceptable, then I think this would be a really cool figure to do. Again, Jack Specific didn't go anywhere near the artist formerly known as Goldust gimmick, so it might be an interesting thing to happen. Number 4 here is Steve Blackman. Now, Steve Blackman did have a classic superstar, and it's sort of questionable how he hasn't had an elite, because, again, maybe not one of the biggest stars of the Attitude Era, but he is certainly one of the most generic. It's not exactly difficult to design a guy with a black hair and black beard and black trousers and maybe give him a kendo stick. It's not really difficult to design. It seems like the kind of thing that you just chuck in a series when you can't really be bothered coming up with something else. I can't really see why they haven't made Steve Blackman. Maybe they will if his Bounty Hunter show gets off the ground. I haven't heard any more about that. I don't know what's happening with that. Is it on? I don't know. Number 3 is Owen Hart. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Owen Hart, but to me, it seems criminal that he has had so little attention over the years. And I suppose for a long time, WWE did have this issue with the Hart family, I suppose, but that seems to be completely under the bridge now. So, where Owen Hart is, I have no idea. I feel like it's one of the most customized figures that people make. I feel like it's something that people haven't seen enough of. I'm going to assume he doesn't have a classic superstar. Yeah, it certainly looks like he doesn't have a classic superstar. But it doesn't make any sense to me why there isn't an Owen Hart figure, at least in the pipeline or something. So, yeah, as much as I'm not a massive fan of Owen Hart, it seems completely bewildering that there isn't one. So, get that made. Number 2 is Ahmed Johnson. Now, I really like Ahmed Johnson. I'm not really sure why, but I always have. He's a very convincing guy. He really should have been WWF champion back in the 90s, but guess not even. He was a very convincing wrestler. I think he was one of the guys where it's like he's dangerous to work with, but in figure form that doesn't really matter. This guy hasn't had a figure since Bone Crunchers. Didn't get touched by classic superstars. You could kind of use Ezekiel Jackson figures as the same guy, because they're just an enormous guy with red trunks. They're not facially dissimilar. This is sounding racist. I don't think, no, yeah, you can sort of get away with like using Ezekiel Jackson, like modding an Ezekiel Jackson into him, but yeah. And my number 1, the rest of the list wasn't really in order, but this is definitely number 1, Al Snow. Now, Al Snow is one of my favourite wrestlers of all time. Not even necessarily just because he was an incredible entertainer as a wrestler, but because he's such a funny guy on Twitter. He seems like a genuinely lovely bloke, and quite frankly, he's just worthy of having a Mattel figure. Another blank mannequin head isn't exactly overwhelming, but at the end of the day, they're never going to try and put one with details on again. And who cares? I've got a Bone Cruncher with the detail one. I'll just use that. I couldn't care less. Al Snow did get a classic superstar and actually a really nice figure, one of my favourites. But quite frankly, I really think he could do with an elite. My classic superstar version has the Jack-specific arms that naturally become loose over the years because they suck. So I'm getting more and more nervous for using him in my Fed. I don't think I have any plans to actually animate a match with him anytime soon. But if I ever do, that sure is going to suck. So, again, Mattel, get it made. And that concludes my list of 10 Attitude Era figures Mattel need to make. If I missed anybody off, please let me know in the comments, because like I said earlier, I might do another one of these. It's very likely that I will. I'll certainly do one for Divas, and I'll certainly do one for tag teams in general. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.